got something rather special for you today, folks. Been doing a bit of research, and one county across from where I live is the county of Bedfordshire. Now recently I've been reading a lot of Beatles books, and I just found something interesting I thought I might want to share with you. So let me take you back to the middle of 1968. So at this time, just for the record, I'm about 8 years old. My mum and dad are running a country pub over in Shropshire. But if you're a Beatles fan, you'll realise that the Beatles at that time were going through a rather acrimonious breakup. They hadn't quite finished. That would come 1970. But their manager, Brian Epstein, had died due to a drug overdose some short time before. They set up the Apple Corporation. And increasingly they were going their separate ways. There was a lot of acrimony, and to be honest, even some degree of hatred as well between some of the members of the band. Anyway, as part of the new Apple Corporation, one of Apple's objectives was to, which was a company, by the way, that the Beatles had set up to handle all their affairs. But as part of their objectives, they wanted to spot new talent. And during that time they were approached by ITV here in the UK, one of the TV companies, if you're not familiar with ITV, to produce the score, the theme song for a TV show called Thingamabob. And they decided they wanted a brass band to do that. So the Beatles did no more than ring up the Black Dyke Mills band, probably the best brass band in the country at that time, and booked a session up in Yorkshire, near, I think, a place called Shipley. So Paul McCartney had travelled up to Yorkshire in his Rolls Royce with his chauffeur, and Derek Taylor, the Beatles press officer, and a few other folks, to record the session in a local hall. And on the way back the following day, they were getting rather bored with the M1, so Paul McCartney turns to one of his fellows, I think it was Derek Taylor, the press officer, and said, let's stop off somewhere, let's find somewhere nice. So what's the place with the most interesting name you can find in Bedfordshire? So as I understand the story goes, the AA road book was opened and they came across the name of Harrold, a little village in Bedfordshire. So McCartney said, oh, I like the sound of that, let's go. So they found themselves in the village of Harrold. Now just let me backtrack a little bit as well. So sometime before this, you'll be aware that John Lennon had left his wife Cynthia. They were happily married for quite a few years. They had a 5-year-old son, Julian. But Lennon was a very mixed up character, an angry man, very bitter, and essentially came under the spell of Yoko Ono. And there was a very, again, I'll use that word acrimonious, but a very acrimonious breakup. Lennon was quite nasty with Cynthia and basically just rejected his son, had nothing to do with him. Now, before then, when the Beatles used to holiday together and take time off together, McCartney had shown a real fondness for young Julian. And and used to spend hours playing with him. And on one occasion he's playing with Julian, or Jules as he was called, in a swimming pool, and Lennon just turned to him and said, "How do you do that?" Because Lennon had no idea how to be a father. His own father had rejected him very early on in his life, and if you read any of the biographies about Lennon, you'll find that his family life was a real mess. Anyway, long story short, the rest of the Beatles, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, just cut Cynthia off, had nothing to do with her, you know, from being quite a good friend, just basically cut her off. But McCartney was different. And he went to visit Cynthia. I think he took her a bunch of flowers, but on the way down he composed a song, and he thought something about wanting to cheer young Julian up, so the title of this song was Hey Jules. Now obviously you can see where this is going, because as with all songwriting, the words were changed and the song eventually came to be known as Hey Jude. And that's the connection to the village of Harrold, where we're going to go right now. Okay, so now we're on what's known as the Harrold Road that connects a little village called Bosiat to Harrold, which I'm assuming is the route that the McCartney and McCartney crew took that particular Sunday in late June. So you can imagine they've been stuck in the car for hours. They've got McCartney's sheepdog Martha with them as well. No air conditioning in those days. A smelly dog, so you're looking for the river, aren't you? Yeah, you can imagine this view hasn't changed much over the 52 years. And the McCartneys turn onto the McCartney tribe turns onto the high street. Park the car, or rather the McCartneys come along the high street, dropped off by the chauffeur, and walk through the village. Okay, so we've got to use a little bit of poetic license here, but I've looked at all the different accounts and I'm assuming that the McCartney tribe were walking down the high street, and as they come up to Mulberry House here on the right hand side, which is a beautiful old thatched cottage, listed building. They come across a man in shorts with sandy hair who's clipping his hedge, and they inquire about where the river is, and they head on down to the Magpie pub for a drink, where the chap who's got the chap with the garden shears turns out to be a dentist who works in Bedford, who's called by the name of Gordon Mitchell. And Gordon Mitchell recognises who it is, and hastily drops his shears and heads down to the Magpie, where he's warmly welcomed by McCartney, and they are invited back to Mitchell's house for lunch. So they spend the evening at Mitchell's house. Little girl comes down the stairs with a toy guitar, which McCartney tunes by putting some coins under the bridge, and it's here that he performs his first ever semi-public version of Hey Jude for them. So they all later decide, after having spent a wonderful evening, eating and drinking and telling stories, and McCartney impresses them. He even goes to visit the invalid father who's upstairs and plays the pink piano that's in his room. And then a little bit later on they adjourn down the road to head to the Oakley Arms. So again, if we retrace the steps past the village green, on the War Memorial, and Paul McCartney, as I'm sure you realise, is the world's most successful musician, worth an estimated $1.2 billion. Singer, songwriter, producer, made films, set up and funded the Institute of Performing Arts in Liverpool. And as we come round the corner, in the centre of Harrold, there's the Oakley Arms right ahead of us. Obviously, pub's having a really hard time during COVID, so it's not open at the moment. So picture the scene on that Sunday in late June 1968. Imagine the door opens and Paul McCartney walks in. And again, the backstory here is that obviously word got round the village very quickly that McCartney was in town, so to speak. So there was a knock on the Mitchells' door while they were eating, and it was the landlady, just to say that she was going to welcome them over to the pub for a drink and a bit of entertainment. Obviously McCartney would provide the entertainment. So over they come. It's what's known as a lock-in. Villagers only, no outsiders. And it goes on till 3 in the morning. McCartney's on the piano, holding forth, and a great time's had by all. So just a little bit of living history, the Oakley Arms. So do come and support this place once it gets going again. Like it said here, the pub is temporarily closed. Nobody there at the moment. We need to save our old English pubs, part of our heritage, part of our fabric. And again, just a little piece of living history which is there, so I hope you've enjoyed that. And as I say, you can take a look at the full story on the Harrold Village website, which I will link to below. Well, heading out of Harrold, lovely little village. And past the Oakley Arms. Quite interesting actually to finish that story off. Just a little PS. They've been drinking all night till 3 AM, they jump in the car and off they go to London.